Hello, everyone. Welcome back to day 45 of my 100-day lives in a 100-day challenge. I had to look at the date because I had to make sure it's day 45. Tonight, I want to talk to you about one of the most powerful stories in the world of personal development and speaking, the story of Brian Tracy. And what I really wanted to touch on is about how his story is, because he didn't start successful, he didn't start wealthy or educated or confident, he didn't start polished. He started struggling. Let me take a drink. Ooh, it's stuck. Ouch. Can't open with the hurt hand. Okay. So, thanks for letting me take that drink. My voice is sounding weird. Anyway, let's get back to that. I think that it's important to know how he started, because sometimes people think that successful speakers, coaches, authors, leaders, and entrepreneurs, they see them already successful and they assume that those people were somehow born different, born into it, had the money or whatever to put them into that situation. But it's not true. Brian Tracy's story reminds us that growth is built, confidence is developed, and success is learned, and purpose is discovered through that persistence. That's why I love his story so much. So I think what the word, the word for tonight that somebody needs, or this morning that someone needs, is persistence. Because life will test you before it trusts you with greater influence. Brian Tracy talked about growing up poor. He worked hard labor jobs, dishwashing, construction. He worked in factories, logging, and even did janitorial work. He traveled the world broke, and he struggled financially. At one point, he was living paycheck to paycheck, barely, barely surviving. Move my table over because my chair is weird. The lighting is weird too. Things. Oh, see my lei hanging here on my microphone. So, anyway, where was I? What makes people successful while others struggle? I always ask that question too. What makes people successful while other people struggles? So, like I said, sometimes people think that, you have to start off rich or in that category where you get everything served to you, and things just come easy. But like in Brian Tracy's story, he was living paycheck to paycheck. And one of the most powerful moments in his story was when he talked about sitting there eating canned tomatoes because that was all that he could afford. Can you imagine that? Just eating the canned tomatoes. So, meanwhile, he sees successful people walking confidently through life, and he begins to ask himself that question, right? What makes some people successful while others struggle? And that question changed his life. And honestly, questions can change your life too. One of the questions that changed my life is that night at the ER, and the ambulance brought me there. It was after one of those horrible times. I had police come in. I had a officer take pictures of me. And in the ER, I saw myself in the mirror. And the question that changed my life is, how did I get here? Not to the ER, but how did I get here? This person in that mirror. How did I get here? So, because the quality of your life is so connected to the quality of the question that you asked, I had to tell myself, like, how do you get out of here? Right? Because the quality of your life is often connected to the quality of the questions. So, not why is everything happening to me, but what can I learn from this? How can I grow through this? What is God trying to teach me? And what gifts are hidden inside this struggle? That shift matters. Brian Tracy realized successful people weren't necessarily smarter, they just learned different habits. They had different mindsets, different disciplines, and different skills. So he became obsessed with learning. And I love this part because it aligns so much with my own heart and my own mission. He committed himself to continuous learning. I always say, keep educating yourself. So, reading, studying, listening, growing, practicing. And you think about it, Brian Tracy began back in the day when there wasn't internet and, everything wasn't so easily accessible. But now it is. AI is accessible. You can do so much more in research and learning. You can ask the questions and get the answers so quick. So he understood something that many people miss. You cannot become who you were created to be if you refuse to grow. Growth requires humility, and humility says, I don't know everything yet, but I'm willing to learn. That is powerful. So, one thing that Brian Tracy emphasizes throughout his story is that speaking is a learnable skill. And I really need somebody to hear that tonight, because so many people disqualify themselves before they even begin. I know, because as a podcast host, people want to be on the show, but a lot of times they come across like, I don't know. I don't know if am I ready? I don't know if I'm ready. Or, like, They take a long time to schedule it in because they're too shy or nervous, right? They say that, oh, they're going to sound, you know, awkward, or they're not going to be good enough, they're not polished enough, or they won't sound professional. That's one thing that I hear a lot. But Brian Tracy reminds us that nobody starts as an expert. No one. Even the greatest speakers, the greatest actors, and um, athletes, all struggled once. They all started somewhere. Even the strongest communicators once doubted themselves. Even people speaking on stages today once had trembling voices and nervous hands. Growth happens through repetition. Practice, practice, practice. That's why I'm doing these 100 lives. My voice is janky right now. But it doesn't have to be perfect. So, not because I don't do it because I'm perfect. I don't do it because every live is going to be flawless, because it is not. Totally not. And I expect it not to be. But because growth requires consistency, and consistency develops confidence. Brian Tracy also talked about moving outside your comfort zone. I know that one spoke right to me, because comfort zones feel safe, but they can also become your prison. Some of us are praying for growth while hiding from discomfort. But the truth is, you cannot grow without stretching. You cannot evolve without challenge. And you cannot become stronger in anything that you choose to do while avoiding pressure. Diamonds are formed under pressure. Character is developed under pressure. And yes, faith grows under pressure. And sometimes God allows uncomfortable seasons because He's developing capacity within us, not to destroy us, but to prepare us. And Brian Tracy eventually became one of the highest paid speakers in the world. But that didn't happen overnight. He failed, he struggled, he made mistakes, he doubted himself, he started small. Sometimes only a few people showed up, but he kept going. And that's the message tonight. Don't quit too soon. Some people stop one chapter before their breakthrough. Some people stop because they expect instant success. But purpose usually requires process, and process develops maturity. One thing I deeply appreciated about Brian Tracy's story is how much responsibility he took for his own growth. Some people, they don't even think about investing in themselves in order to grow, right? But Brian Tracy, he didn't sit around waiting for somebody to save him. He learned, he adapted, improved, he studied successful people, and he refined his skills. That is wisdom, because healing matters, but accountability matters too. Growth requires ownership, and sometimes we have to lovingly ask ourselves, what habits do I need to change? What fears are holding me back? What excuses have been uncomfortable? or become comfortable, not uncomfortable? What excuses have become comfortable, so comfortable that you keep using it and it just flows right off your lips and you don't even recognize them anymore? Because breakthrough often lives on the other side of honesty. So you have to say what is true. And let me say this too. Success is not only about money. I know society defines success by titles, followers, income, or status. But true success is alignment, peace, purpose, healing, faith, character, integrity, and service. Because what good is external success if internally you're still broken? So someone once asked me, what does success look like? And success to me looks like freedom. That is what success looks like to me. Brian Tracy became successful financially, but the deeper lesson is that he transformed mentally. And transformation always begins internally first. The way you think affects the way you speak. The way you speak affects the way you act. And the way you act affects your future. That's why protecting your mindset matters so much. Tonight, I want to encourage somebody who feels behind in life. I know I've been there. And when I look at some things and sometimes I get down on myself, I still feel behind in a lot of things. And then people remind me that I've done a lot. I need to be reminded sometimes. Maybe you feel like you wasted years. Maybe you feel overlooked or stuck. Maybe you're just starting over. Maybe you're rebuilding like I was from trauma, heartbreak, failure, divorce, grief, or illness, or some kind of rejection or disappointment. But please hear me clearly. Your current chapter is not your final chapter. God can still use your story. He can still redeem your path, your pain. He can still open doors and he can still transform your life. And sometimes the people with the hardest beginnings, let me tell you, become the strongest voices of hope. That is why your story matters. Not because it's perfect, but because it's real. Brian Tracy's journey reminds us you do not need perfect beginnings to create meaningful impact. You just need the willingness, you need faith, consistency, and courage, and you need perseverance. So tonight I want to leave you with this. Keep growing, keep learning, keep showing up, keep speaking, keep healing, keep believing. Invest in yourself and keep learning. And don't allow single struggles to deter you, because temporary struggles, don't allow that temporary struggles to convince you that permanent success is impossible. Because your life can change one decision at a time. And before I leave tonight, I want to read something that was in here. And it's a poem. Don't quit. When things go wrong, as they sometimes will, when the road you're trudging seems all uphill, when funds are low and debts are high, when you want to smile but you have to sigh, when care is pressing you down a bit, rest if you must, but don't you quit. When life is queer with its twists and turns, as every one of us sometimes learns, and many a failure turns about, when he might have won, he had stuck it out. Don't give up, though the pace seems slow. You may succeed with another blow. Success is failure turned inside out, the silver tint of the clouds of doubt. And you never can tell how close you are. It may be near when it seems so far. So stick to the fight when your heart is hit. It's when things seem worse that you must not quit. And that author is unknown. I've heard this one a long time ago, and it was on a plaque that I had when I was younger. I think I must have been just a child when I found this plaque with it, and when I read it, I just loved it. And so, oh, my nose is itching, and I kept it with my books, and I always read it. But when I saw it in there, I was like, hey, that is so cool, because I know that one. And where's my books? Sorry, I was doing my flowers. I was stringing my lace. So, owie. So hard to grab things when your finger is hurt. You never know how much your pinky finger bends when you use your other fingers until you're hurt. So there was this is Think and Grow Rich. Think and Grow Rich. If you've never read this book, this is one that you have to read also. So let me see if I can find it real quick. This is an amazing book. Hold on. So anyway, I might not be able to find exactly where it is, but it's right towards the beginning. And it is about 50-cent lesson in persistence. No, not that one. Right? Almost there. Okay. So, here. I found it. Okay. So this one is called 3 Feet from Gold. Right? And that's it. So wait, that wasn't. I was like, where do I start? Okay. Let me just start somewhere. Somewhere. All right. Months went by. Apparently nothing happened to bring the covenant goal which Barnes had set up in his mind as his definite major purpose. But something important was happening in Barnes' mind. He was consistently intensifying his desire to become the business associate of Edison. Psychologists have correctly said that when one is truly ready for a thing, it puts in its appearance. Barnes was ready for a business association with Edison. Moreover, he was determined to remain steady until he got what he was seeking. He did not say to himself, "Oh, well, what's the use? I guess I'll change my mind and try for a salesman job." But he did say, "I came here to go into business with Edison, and I'll accomplish this and if it takes the remainder of my life." He meant it. What a different story men would have to tell if only they would adopt a definite purpose and stand by that purpose until it had time to become an all-consuming obsession. Maybe young Barnes did not know it at the time, but his bulldog determination, his persistence in standing back of a single desire was destined to mow down all opposition and bring him the opportunity he was seeking. When the opportunity came, it appeared in a different form and from a different direction than Barnes had expected. That is one of the tricks of opportunity. It has a sly habit of slipping in by the back door, and often it becomes disguised in the form of misfortune or temporary defeat. Perhaps this is why so many fail to recognize opportunity. Mr. Edison had just perfected a new office device, known at the time as the Edison dictating machine, now the Ediphone. His salesmen were not enthusiastic over the machine. They did not believe it could be sold without great effort. Barnes saw his opportunity. He had crawled in quietly, hidden in a queer-looking machine which interested no one but Barnes and the inventor. Barnes knew he could sell the Edison dictating machine. He suggested to he suggested this to Edison and promptly got his chance. He did sell the machine. In fact, he sold it so successfully that Edison gave him a contract to distribute and market it all over the nation. Out of that business association grew the slogan, "Made by Edison and installed by Barnes." The business alliance has been in operation for more than 30 years. Out of it, Barnes made himself rich in money, but he has done nothing infinitely greater. He was proved that one may think and grow rich. How much actual cash that original desire of Barnes has been worth? To have no way of knowing, perhaps it was brought to him $2 or $3 million, but the amount, whatever it was, becomes insignificant when compared with the greater assets he acquired in the form of definite knowledge, and that an intangible impulse of thought can be transmuted into its physical counterpart by the application of known principles. Barnes literally thought himself into a partnership with great Edison, and he thought himself into a fortune. He had nothing to start with except the capacity to know what he wanted and the determination to stand by that desire until he realized it. He had no money to begin with. He had but little education. He had no influence, but he did have initiative, faith, and the will to win. With these intangible forces, he made himself number one man in the greatest inventor, with the greatest inventor ever lived. Now, let's look at a different situation. A study a man who had plenty of tangible evidence of riches, but lost it because he stopped 3 feet short of the goal he was seeking. 3 feet from gold. One of the most common causes of failure is the habit of quitting. When one is overtaken by temporary defeat, every person is guilty of this mistake at one time or another. An uncle of R.U. Derby was caught by the gold fever in the gold rush days and went west to dig and grow rich. He had never heard that more gold he had never heard that more gold has been mined from the brains of men than has ever been taken from the earth. He staked a claim and went to work with pick and shovel. The going was hard, but his lust for gold was definite. After weeks of labor, he was rewarded by the discovery of a shiny ore. He needed machinery to bring the ore to the surface. Quietly, he covered up the mine, retraced his footsteps to his home in Williamsburg, Maryland, told his relatives and a few neighbors of the strike. They got together money for the needed machinery, and it shipped. And Uncle and Derby went back to work the mine. The first car of ore was mined and shipped to a smelter. The returns proved they had one of the richest mines in Colorado. A few more cars of that ore would clear the debts. Then would come the big killing in profits. Down went the drills, up went the hopes of Darby and Uncle. Then something happened. A vein of gold ore, the vein of gold ore disappeared. They had come to the end of the rainbow, and the pot of gold was no longer there. They drilled on desperately, trying to pick up the vein again, all to no avail. Finally, they decided to quit. They sold the machinery to a junk man for a few $100s and took the train back home. Some junk men are dumb, but not this one. He called in a mining engineer to look at the mine and do a little calculating. The engineer advised that the project had failed because the owners were not familiar with fault lines. His calculations showed that the vein would be found just 3 feet from where Darby had stopped drilling. That is exactly where it was found. The junk man took millions of dollars in ore from the mine because he knew enough to seek expert counsel before giving up. Most of the money which went into the machinery was procured through the efforts of R.U. Darby, who was a very young man. The money came from his relatives and neighbors because they had their faith in him. He paid them back every dollar of it, although he was years in doing so. Long after, Mr. Darby recouped his loss many times over. Then he made the discovery that desire can be transmuted into gold. The discovery came after he went into business of selling life insurance. Remembering that he lost a huge fortune because he stopped 3 feet from gold, Darby profited by the experience in his chosen work by the simple method of saying to himself, I stopped 3 feet from gold, but I will never stop because men say no when I ask them to buy insurance. So that was a good lesson on how someone had all of the help, right? The people helped him and got the money, and then he got his uh, digging machine or whatever. But he didn't have the smarts enough to ask for help. And sometimes we give up and we quit before asking for help, and you are just 3 feet from gold. So just remember that and don't quit too soon. Know that you need to keep educating yourself. You need to invest in yourself. And when you have the opportunity, because someone else is there, do take it. Do take that opportunity, but know that you just need to know that even if things go astray and things get hard, and though it is, don't quit, because you could be just like Darby and stop 3 feet from gold. So until next time, remember, don't allow temporary struggle to convince you that permanent success is impossible, because your life can change one decision at a time. Mahalo for staying with me, and God's blessing as always. Ahui ho. I'm Michelle Ibalarosa Kawano, and I just want to thank you for walking this journey with me, for staying on with me tonight. And if this blessed you, please share it. Share this live, share the channel, subscribe, and leave a comment. And remember that you were created by the Creator to be a creative. So grow and heal and shine, because someone is waiting for you. Good night, ʻohana.